Hey Guru Nation, welcome back to another episode of Random Musings from the Clinical Trials Guru, another car edition, another stuck on the freeway.
Welcome to LA.
Through downtown LA, the day before the election, guys. Things are getting boarded up because regardless of who wins, and you'll know very soon because you're going to watch this when it's already decided. Maybe it's not decided. Maybe you still don't know. But we had a meeting today. Let's talk a little bit about the meeting. And Chris is here too, by the way. You've been hearing him. Chris, you gotta be pointing it on yourself when you're talking.
I said hi. Waved hi.
So, the lunch meeting, about inefficiencies from site levels and doctors' offices, started talking about patient centricity and things like that as well, how to make the whole patient experience better. What are your thoughts on that? Like, as far as research participants are concerned, what are your thoughts on making the patient experience better? This is about sites and what sites can do. First of all, let's talk about diversity a little bit. Okay, so what are some of the things sites can do to increase diversity in clinical research? And I want to send a shout out to Latinos in Clinical Research. We're starting that. It's official. Just go to latinosinClinicalResearch.com, sign up, get notified of our Zoom meetings. We're going to have Zoom meetings. We're going to have special guest meetings. We're going to have career education. We're going to have business development, networking, all the fun stuff through Zoom. And then when this pandemic's over, in person. We're going to do like physical conferences when this thing's over.
Yeah, okay.
They're saying by this time next year, we're back at conferences.
Well, I have my own opinion on this whole thing, but I'm not going to go into it here.
That's a deep rabbit hole.
Yes, it is.
But we won't do that. But basically, diversity in research, patient centricity in research, sites play a crucial role in all of this. What advice do you have to a site that's just getting started maybe right now? Maybe there's a physician. Let's use the one that we just partnered with as a hypothetical, okay, without mentioning his name.
What clinic?
The one in San Bernardino.
Okay.
He's just starting. He has a private practice. He wants to do all kinds of stuff in there as well, and research.
Right.
So what can we help him? How can he make a patient-centric experience for his patients in research? Like, what would be the advice you would give to him for general medicine? So we're not talking psychiatry trials, just general medicine, asthma, ulcerative colitis, dermatology type stuff. How do you make the experience better for the patients who are in the study? Because retention is a big problem in research.
Sure.
And then we'll get to diversity later.
Well, that's an interesting question because I don't know how you improve retention with general medicine studies. I mean, I suppose you could offer conveniences such as, if you're going to be here any longer than an hour or two, we'll provide you a meal. Mm-hmm. We'll provide you beverages, have a number of different choices. But outside of that, I really don't know what you would offer. You're restricted in terms of pay, right? So obviously pay could help. I suppose the only other thing you could offer is maybe an additional treatment. But again, research isn't treatment, so...
Oops, but don't worry about the oops part because this is a good conversation. And this is a podcast too. So, oops aside, it is an alternative. Right? And it can be used simultaneously, especially if you are the treating doctor and you are also the principal investigator. You have excellent oversight. First of all, you have a great history of the patient from the past. You have great context. And you also have excellent safety oversight when the patient is in your study. Because you can tell them, yeah, this is research, it's experimental, but it is an alternative treatment option if you get the treatment part. Otherwise, it's placebo and there's really no benefit.
Right.
But I know you're my patient, so we can always take you out and put you back on your standard of care, right? And it's through me. So one of the things we got at from our meeting today, we met with would you call him a venture capitalist or
yes.
What? Okay, so a VC guy that we met today, and he wants to come do some disruptions in the clinical research space, and healthcare. He came from education and construction background. Mm-hmm. But one of the things he was talking about was in studying practices, he noticed that patients jump around from doctor to doctor a lot. And remember, we asked, well, what's the main contributor of this? It's a lack of follow-up on the doctor. Like, they're just not calling them and saying, hey, do you want to come back in, or what's going on? Even me, with my own doctor, if I were to never call him again to schedule, they'd never call me back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the continuity of care, I think is what it's called, in healthcare is lacking. And a lot of it is due to not utilizing technology, specifically in the form of communication tools like text alerts, right? I don't get any text reminders from any of my doctors I go to personally. Do you? I don't get text reminders. I get it from my dentist, not from my doctor.
I get text reminders for my scheduled my scheduled visit is either like tomorrow or the day after. I get reminders. I get reminders.
Okay, so they're starting to use this.
I don't
technology.
get. It's time for you to come in again. I don't get that.
You don't get that.
But I do get once I've scheduled an appointment.
So at least you get that. I don't get any of that.
Yep.
With mine. So to translate this to the research side, where retention is even more of an issue, right? Because we're talking about a matter of weeks, and some patients only show up for like 1/4 of a study,
Right.
and then they're a loss to follow-up.
Yep.
Right? Now, loss to follow-ups are not the greatest thing in research. Loss to follow-ups are worse than early term.
Oh,
Because
sure.
they don't have that endpoint, the final endpoint, right?
Yep.
Plus, they probably have the diaries with them, the tablets. They probably have the investigational product with them. So, it's like all this stuff that you would get at the early term visit.
And sponsors love it when the patient randomizes and then does not come back for another visit. Lost
Right.
follow-up. That's like the absolute worst. And why that's the absolute worst is because the sponsors paid for the patient to get through the screening visits. Now that they're going to start acquiring data, and there is no data to acquire.
Right. So do you think what can sites do if they're, let's say, back to our example, or another doctor out there who's thinking about utilizing our service? Hey, Chris and Dan, what can we do to make sure that we as a site are, and we'll get to diversity, but keeping our patients enrolled and engaged throughout the entire time in the study? Like making sure they're coming for their appointments.
Well, you could use the the visit reminder, text alerts.
How do you do that? So they do text alerts for studies?
No,
Or you'd have to get your own vendor, right?
Right. So
There is a company called Mozio. Shout out to Mozio. They're an old supporter of the clinical trials guru, like from 2010. They specialize in text messaging reminders to patients for sites. Mozio, Mosio. So something like that.
Sure. And then there's the old-fashioned route, just somebody from the site calls the patient to remind them.
Have a dedicated concierge.
Yep.
Right? Sometimes the coordinator should be the dedicated concierge, but other times it could be an assistant to the coordinator.
Sure.
Like, hey, you are the dedicated concierge for this patient. You send them birthday cards. All that stuff. When she first started, Monica was really good at doing this stuff. Because she was basically a recruitment specialist as well as like a patient concierge.
Right.
She would keep track of their birthdays, everything. What about diversity? Let's say you're a new doctor, a new clinician starting a site. Hey Dan, I want to do everything I can. I understand there's a huge problem with the lack of minority participation in clinical research studies. What can we do to improve that? We can go down several rabbit holes. If we get this project, we're going to be doing a lot with the sites in our network and with sites outside of our network. We're going to get into some of those ideas. But what can that doctor do? Like, let's say tomorrow he wants to start a clinic to get more minority participation in research. African American, Hispanic American, Asian Americans in research.
Well, they just recruited from their database.
From their database, yeah.
There's other ways too. You obviously, hopefully, they have colleagues that are physicians or nurse practitioners or physician assistants that can help them with recruitment and
community outreach.
Put the word out. I'm looking specifically for these people with this disease.
Community outreach for sure. It's a grassroots effort to get minorities in research. I'd take it a step further, and you and I are doing this with our projects, you want the site to be, if they're not already in those minority communities, you want them to start having a presence out there. So community outreach, right? Lunch and learn program. It's tough to do now in a pandemic era where nobody's doing lunch and learns.
So,
But be out in the community, be involved. And another way to do that is to hire people from those communities to be your staff.
But
like patient recruiters, right?
There's limitations to that, right? So
Yeah.
if you're your practice, or you're a private practice physician, and your practice is in, I don't know, what's a very Caucasian community, somewhere in Wisconsin, right?
Okay.
Or Iowa.
Okay.
Right? You probably don't have too much diversity. Okay?
Right.
So I think you're geographically limited,
Sure.
where you have to already kind of be in that community.
So if
Where-
sponsors, basically what you're saying is if sponsors want more diversity, the onus is really on them and less so on the sites. They need to be smarter about where they're selecting the sites.
Yeah, I would say it's like a 70-30 proposition, where suppose you're looking specifically for Hispanics for a study, okay, or Latinos for a study, and you're not going to go to, again, Iowa necessarily, right? You need to go to maybe a southern state, so you're more likely to find a physician that has this database of patients. I think that's what you're more geographically limited. No?
Yeah, I
Would you go
agree.
to Iowa
No.
for a Latino population?
No. So it is on the sponsor. You got to select. You got to make sure you have a presence in the communities that are underrepresented.
Exactly.
Right. And the problem with the industry is, at least it used to be, they're taking some action now. So if you're a research naive clinician in one of these areas, you need to be applying for site. You need to get in contact with us. If you are in a primarily Hispanic or African American or Asian American community, you need to get in touch with us or someone like us, but we can definitely help you get started in research.
Mm-hmm.
Because the sponsors are going to love you. They're coming after you. Doesn't matter if you're research naive. They're hiring people like us to help you get started.
Yep. And to walk you through research and how to do it.
And to walk you through. If you are already a site and you want to expand your reach into these communities, I think one of the best things you can do is start hiring people from these communities. So if you want more African Americans in your study, hire some African American patient recruiters. Hire some African American and then train them to be coordinators. Hire an African American study coordinator. Hire an African American patient concierge. Hire a Latin American coordinator. And then groom them to be coordinators and to be assets to your site, because they are going to be assets to your site. Because guess what? The way we human beings operate is we tend to trust the people that look more like us, right? From our same ethnicity, same background as us. There's just something there. Where I just bought this car from a Romanian person, we had a very good rapport because we're both Romanian.
Yeah,
It's just work. It's natural.
I saw a study on that. It's like 15% more compatible.
Right. And for African Americans who are historically, for good reason, the Tuskegee experiment being the main culprit, very hesitant to consider clinical research an option, right? It helps to have African American employees at the site level.
Yeah.
If you can have African American PI, of course, clinician, sub-I, nurse practitioner, all the best. So this is some advice for the sponsors out there, just like we're giving some advice for the sites. If you're a sponsor out there planning your next trial and you're concerned about getting minorities in your study, guess what? Your colleagues have been reaching out to me and Chris all year talking about these kind of things. There's sponsors are out there doing this. So you want to, it's grassroots. You want to locate the areas where you're more likely to get minorities into your studies. You want to locate those areas and then go find the clinicians that are well trusted by the community members and get them to be principal investigators. And yes, it's a lot of training and a lot of these two people you're looking at right now that do that. There's others too. I don't know who they are, but I'm sure there's others. But that's what you should be doing if you're a sponsor. And if you're a site, those are the things you should be doing. Is there anything else we missed on this diversity topic, or we covered everything?
Well, I'm sure we missed something, but I can't think of anything.
So that's in a nutshell how to do it. We'll keep it short and sweet, but it's still long enough for a podcast. So thank you very much, Chris, for holding the camera in the car. And thank you everybody for watching and listening. And we'll catch y'all later.
Everybody have a good week.